cross your legs, whatever you want. Don't worry about what other people are doing.
It's over the band.
And now,
He's switching to the left leg up for the Yellow Terror Rebellion.
Snap fingers.
there we go. That's the sign for the next slide.
Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to unmute your mics, and rather than count you in, and we'll just see that as the cue. So it's 17:01 now, so let's go for it.
Yeah.
Alright.
Hello and welcome back to Rally Point. We are here for episode number 4, and I am joined by two very special guests, two men of great honour. To my right, we have
Leif, game designer on Total War 3 Kingdoms.
and of course,
I'm Al Bickham's Development Communications
the
Manager.
man, the myth, the legend.
Shut up.
So today we're going to be talking about Three Kingdoms in two aspects. So the first aspect, of course, is something that if you went to was it EGX Res, I believe?
EGX and Life did the same thing at EGX Berlin.
Yeah. So if you managed to grab one of those events or catch the live stream, then you would have seen either in English or in German a talk on
More or less German,
yeah on the Wuxing sort of groundwork that we've been using for the development of Three Kingdoms. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. We're also going to be having a little conversation about the Yellow Turban Rebellion now that the trailer has come out, who they are, how they fare in the lands of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is going to be very exciting. But we'll start with the former, of course, Wuxing. So you guys have been giving a little bit of an insight to the behind the scenes of the development for Three Kingdoms with this.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
So
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, so the Wuxing is an ancient philosophy from ancient China, and describes sort of the interaction between 5 phases. And it's used to describe various phenomena in everyday life, but also in spiritual life, like cosmology, nature, seasons, all sorts of things. And for us it was primarily basically a design lens, a design instrument where we looked at our features and to basically come up with interesting ideas how these features interact or how subcomponents of these features interact. We used the Wuxing as a great inspiration.
Yeah, so we've been having a little look at how that works. So we've got some of the slides from the presentation as well that we can look through, but it's kind of like a groundwork for how everything in the game works. So certain characters will be aligned to certain elements. You've also got certain buildings and certain units, and some will even be sort of hybrids of the in-between. So how do these elements sort of react in the Wuxing theory?
Well, there's sort of 2 ways in which they interact. So these 5 phases represent, which elemental phases, and we don't. It's not like the ancient Greeks and their Platonic solids. These aren't the building blocks of the world or anything. What they are is 5 elements in constant flux, which is why they're generally referred to as phases rather than static elements. So they all support, each one supports another in turn, which you can see with the black arrows around the outside of if you look to the left of the screen there with the 5 elements, they all support each other, but and it's the generative cycle, I believe that's called, isn't it? And then each is also strong against, able to overcome another, which is the overcoming cycle, which is represented by the red arrows in the middle there.
Sort of
and
pentagon in the middle,
Yeah, that's right. And it's exactly. This isn't a satanic thing.
It just looks like some kind of arcane ritual.
We should do some kind of ritual now. And they all support each other, and they're all strong against each other, and by implication, each is weak against another. So
that's really the interesting thing, that if you think about normal sort of game mechanisms like rock, paper, scissors, where you have the overcoming cycle, the Wuxing gave us this great inspiration for this generative cycle, where different phases support each other.
And that's something that's been in Total War from the get-go already. We've already had like
you always have this kind of interaction between systems and components.
Yeah, so it's nice to have sort of a lens to view that through, and it gives you a bit more context of how things work in the game world.
And sort of one baseline for us was always the idea that the Wuxing gives you the 5 sort of social classes of society. So as you can see here, the wood phase, for example, that's representative of the peasantry. Fires for the soldiery and so forth. And obviously these social classes or types within the society, they interact within your sort of civic administration of your faction in Three Kingdoms. And good examples are these buildings here, where the peasantry, for example, represented by a granary, where you store your resources for bad times. And but these resources, they also support your military. They provide supplies for your armies. They give you better replenishment, which, generates the fire phase, which is the military. And the military is used to build up a strong government. Military forces provide order in your provinces. They help you rule your lands. And so you have this generative cycle.
So wood feeds fire. Fire obviously turns things to ash and creates earth. So just those three particular examples that that Leif has used there. That's the supporting cycle.
Then you have the conflicting cycle, where a strong military is often used to destroy and pillage industry and infrastructure. You pillage settlements, you loot them.
Just as fire melts metal.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, for example, a strong sort of peasantry, a strong populace, can be used to overthrow governments and can create sort of order problems in your provinces.
Which we'll be talking a little bit about later.
So that's basically the wood splitting the earth and overcoming earth.
So it's not just the infrastructure of your empire. It's something that's going to interplay with a lot of systems. So I think if we move over to the next slide, we're going to see the characters and how they're involved with that as well. So how does this cyclical nature affect the characters on the campaign map, which of course is the center of Three Kingdoms?
So all our characters, they fall into 5 different classes, each class representing one of the phases.
Guy, do you want to flick forward a slide and we'll we'll see. Yeah, we go.
Nice. So Yuan, he's of the fire phase. He's a vanguard character, fire character. So he primarily represents the fire phase, and so we have the 5 types for each of the 5 phases. But as El said in the beginning, it's very much about interaction between the phases and how they also feed into each other. So all characters carry all of these phases within them. Not like no character is just fire phase. They all carry the resolve of the wood phase. They all carry the authority of the earth phase, but to different extent.
Different extents. So as a fire character, for example, as a vanguard, vanguards, they're soldiers. They rely on instinct. So instinct is their kind of core or most defining characteristic.
Trait,
Exactly. And as you go through the skill tree, and you unlock new support, you put skill points in and you unlock new skills. These enhance your characteristics, and enhancing those characteristics gives you bonuses related to those characteristics. So one of his core skills is literally vanguard, and as you increase that, it increases his instinct further. And that's his that's a look at his starting stats, and you can see he's already high in instinct. You put more into instinct, he'll get better bonuses from instinct. He'll get better bonuses in battle. And their elemental phase, they kind of represent as a character archetype in the same way that a strategist is water or whatever. Vanguards will have access to more elite tiers of their kind of fire units, like shock cav.
But at the same time, you can also increase the other attributes. Xiao Yuan, as a player, you can obviously pick skills or other means to push the attributes forward. And you don't necessarily have to focus on instinct. It would be an obvious, relatively strong choice, but you can, for example, try to push his authority even further, which gives you different bonuses, which can create nice synergies with your either the special units you can recruit or with the other bonuses from the other attributes.
So the whole thing is, and this is true pretty much all round, where you see where we've used Wuxing throughout the game, we don't want it to be too formulaic, right? So you still have choices about how to modify your character by putting points into their different skill trees and increasing those core elemental characteristics, right? So you can broaden their skill sets in other areas. You could have a strategist that is actually more suited to going into battle, and using his troops in a different way, say, because of the points you put into different areas. So,
and in
or
those
he
same
brings
ways,
benefits to certain troops.
Yeah,
that
and
you
in,
wouldn't
in
normally
those
do.
same ways, like a fire character isn't limited to just bringing shock cavalry.
No,
you
that's
can also
right.
have like a very varied roster under his command.
That's right. Yeah. The character archetypes kind of define. I mean, they all get a range of units. Just because he's a vanguard doesn't mean he can't recruit basic archers, but he's not going to have access to, say, the sort of high tier archers that a strategist would, because water, bows, strategists, they're all part of the water cycle. So,
But you can build really cool synergies within this. Like one of my favorite examples is the strategist. He can recruit the best archers in the game, but he also unlocks the unit formations for other troops in the army, right? So predominantly, spear troops are gonna benefit from these formations. Water nourishes wood, so you could focus the strategist on boosting the resolve attribute, which helps with the spearmen. So you basically just focus the strategist on leading spearmen into the battle with the formations, with a high resolve, and still strong wood units. So it's a good
so there's nice fluidity to it. You can customize those characters however you like, essentially.
And you'll see, it's not like we have a Wuxing panel in the game. It's not gamey like that. It's a separation and a drive of the kind of underlying systems, the synergies and the conflicts within those systems and between systems as well. So the way you'll see it kind of manifested in the game is through. So in the character panel, you'll literally see the symbols there, but that's about the only place. Most of it's color coding. So you look at the buildings, and the water buildings, which is sort of education, trade. You'll see they have blue roofs. You'll see they have or the name will be written in blue, or you'll see something else, and you'll see a little water symbol. So it's subtle, but it shows you. It starts. Once you start spotting it everywhere, you're like, and then you start spotting synergies that you can use.
Obviously, we always, our goal was always that, players, it's not being put into their faces, but once you start sort of digging into it, you will sort of almost re-engineer the Wuxing and realize, cool, that's actually in here, and I can use it for further planning.
And that makes sense, because water feeds wood, and this is benefiting this in some way, So,
and you can see even Jehu Yuan here, clad in red, it gives you sort of a visual indication.
Exactly.
You know what kind of champion that you're coming up against, and is that reflected in the unit design as well?
I mean,
definitely. Yeah,
they're all sort of carrying their sort of main style and for their face with them.
Actually, do you want to flick forward a slide, Guy, and we'll have a quick look at. So your army composition can benefit from this as well. So, that was a great example that Leif said about water feeding wood. Therefore, you could have a strategist, and because his natural skill is to unlock unit formations, maybe you want to buff up his resolve, because that's going to give you those wood bonuses, and therefore you use spearmen. But you can do that with the three, because you can take up to 3 characters, 3 generals or warlords into a single army. So you can mix and match your kind of elemental phases represented by the characters you bring into the army. So you might want to take, you've got a strategist. So this is sample army. You've got a strategist in there. So he's got all his bow stuff. He's got some good elite bow stuff, but he's also supporting the wood character as well,
providing those formations to his allied characters.
So finding synergies within your army as you mix and match generals.
And then obviously you have the spear guy here, basically with this retinue of spear units holding the line, the melee line, giving the strategist the opportunity to shoot from the back, but also giving the fire general, the vanguard general, opportunity to actually flank. So in that way, a strong melee line helps fire to actually do its sort of pushing forward, like exploding damage from the flanks.
So you can even see the good old-fashioned hammer and anvil through the lens of Wuxing.
Exactly.
Wood feeds fire. Yeah,
that's very cool. And I suppose from that perspective as well, we can see the fact that it's not just the cyclical nature of feeding. You're also going to have that disruption as well. So certain characters are going to be better at dealing with other characters.
I mean, we're going to talk about that the next slide, I believe, a little bit about how the units on the battlefield actually interact, and obviously what we just saw with the retinues these generals, they bring these units into battle. So, for example, the strategist with his archers, that's a very good counter against other aggressive flankers like shock cavalry, water, drowses, fire, and other interactions like mainly the overcoming cycle. But like Al said earlier, it's not black and white. It's not just every water unit will always beat all.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's, if you have
especially if they get hand to hand.
Sometimes it's about weight of numbers.
Yeah.
You can throw as much water at a fire as you want, but if there's much more fire than water, then it's not going to put it out. So, you can have some archers facing a load of shock cavalry, but the shock cavalry get through, they're going to chew up those archers.
Yeah.
So, the individual variables in battle, are going to play a part as well. So, like super heavy shock cavalry with loads of armor, high tier, with a high unit rank, a lot of arrows are going to bounce off them, and they're going to get through and kill those archers. So,
and they even kill spearmen. Even though spearmen are generally the counter against these cavalry units, but
exactly. It's situational, and again, you don't want things to be too rigid because you want players to come up with their own builds. Come up with their own unique army compositions which suit their playstyle or are custom built to take something else down. So the idea of making everything rigid and absolutely adhere to this is sort of against the whole principle, really.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about Three Kingdoms next, because we have a little discussion on the Yellow Turban Rebellion coming up as well. So they're going to be using a slightly different philosophy to all of this. But
Yes.
Before we get into that,
A very Taoist philosophy.
yeah, a very Taoist philosophy. Before we get into that, let's just answer the very simple question: what is the Yellow Turban Rebellion?
So, essentially, it was the catalyst for the events of the Three Kingdoms period, right? So, you've got Emperor Ling of the Han Dynasty, whose court was notoriously corrupt. He was kind of in the pocket of his court eunuchs, who basically completely abused their position to live in lives of lavish excess. Now, the emperor, to rule, needs the mandate of heaven.
Yes.
Right? And this is heaven going, yes, you have the divine right to rule, you are a good and just and worthy ruler, therefore you may be emperor, but, it's conditional. You've got to be a good guy, right? And
earn it. Yeah.
Sorry?
You need to earn it.
Yeah, you need to earn it. Yeah, you need to earn it by through your actions. And one of the signs of an emperor losing the mandate of heaven is natural catastrophes.
Yeah.
So a bunch of stuff happened at once, basically. The peasantry, the working classes, essentially in their millions, were being heavily taxed, and they saw their taxes going straight into the pockets of the eunuchs, and local officials, local administrational officials. Yeah, everyone's getting fat off the work of the common man, kind of thing. And at the same time, there was
Natural disasters in terms of
exactly there was a massive flood, swept away crops. There was a huge famine in the north.
bad signs.
But all bad signs.
Yeah.
I mean, major natural disasters. So three brothers called the Zhang brothers appeared, and they basically said, look, the Ling dynasty, the Han dynasty, as Emperor Ling has lost the mandate of heaven. Look at everything that's happening here. And they were Taoists, and they spread these Taoist ideas of frugality, humility, and compassion. This was the polar opposite of what the power base, what the Han dynasty represented at this time, and hope spread like wildfire. They were like, we're going to fight for the great peace. We're going to make the great peace happen in our time. So the word spread, and they all wore these yellow turbans on their heads, which represented the rise of the yellow sky.
Yeah.
The Han dynasty was considered to be the blue sky reign, and they were like, it's time for the yellow sky to rise, so they would wear these yellow headscarves. So massive rebellion, massive popular uprising, one of the biggest in ancient China's history. And it was suddenly the Han dynasty was under direct threat. And ultimately, Ling called all his allies, and they got their armies together, and they crushed the Yellow Turban Uprising, the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and that's kind of the point at which where the campaign, the base game campaign starts.
Yeah.
Right? You still have, and I mean, for another 20 years afterwards, there were pockets of resistance, small bands of Yellow Turbans.
Yeah, essentially the
running
whole
around place.
period was kicked off by this rebellion.
Exactly,
so it was sort of
and it
the
left
match that lit the fire.
Precisely,
yeah.
and it left the Han dynasty in ruins essentially, and
And
it
many-
kicked off a succession.
Many of the great heroes of the Three Kingdoms period, they basically sort of earned their
Their title
title and their
fighting them,
standing
yeah.
during these earlier wars.
Yeah.
Liu Bei and his brothers quelling rebellions, and
Yeah.
Cao Cao's tactical expertise against them. So-
Exactly, yeah. And of course, it damaged the Han dynasty so badly, it destabilized everything, and hence the Three Kingdoms. So our whole idea with it was how can we bring some of that, how can we introduce that catalyst for the events of the period into it. So what we've done is we've taken three of the Yellow Turban factions and built them around these Taoist ideas, right? So the Yellow Turban Rebellion pack is basically 3 new playable factions. They're all Yellow Turban factions, and they're all driven in their quest for the Great Peace. What they want to do is put a just and fair and compassionate, frugal and humble ruler on the throne, as emperor. They're not in it for gain like most of the rest of the dynasties. They're not in it for supremacy. They're in it to improve the lot of the common man. So it's a very
Rid of
different
the
kind of gameplay
corruption,
style.
basically. Rid of the corruption that has befallen the land.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is the main goal.
And each of the faction leaders, because it's 3 Yellow Turban factions, each of those faction leaders represents and is incredibly heavily themed around each of those 3 virtues. So the first one is based on frugality, the second one is compassion, and the other one is humility, and they're very, very strongly themed, and this affects everything. It affects their particular traits, their campaign bonuses, their battle bonuses, all that stuff, and also the units that they can recruit as well, because each of the 3 factions can recruit from a great big body of different sort of peasantry units, which are really interesting because they're mixed units as well. You see mixed uniforms in there because these people are from all walks of life.
These are not the official Han soldiers.
Exactly, they're not drilled in uniforms.
Yeah.
They're like, there's a couple of teachers and a bunch of farmers and a guy who used to work at the barracks down the road. So
yeah, because it's even soldiers who basically don't believe in the Han as well anymore and just joined this cause too.
So each of those faction leaders can recruit from that great body of peasant soldiers, but also they get their own unique kind of heavily themed again and elite units that they can recruit specifically, and each of those new 3 warlord archetypes, like we have the 5 in the core game, each of these new 3 types can also be recruited as generals for the armies as well. They get their own unique buildings and all the extra stuff you'd imagine in a what we're now calling a warlord pack for 3 Kingdoms. Yeah.
Well, so it's
a lot
kind of
of
an
content.
interesting position as well, because it puts you in. Because one thing that's quite interesting with Total War, especially in the historical aspect, is that you can rewrite history, right?
Yeah.
And it puts you in a position where you've got these...
you're the underdog.
Yeah, you're the
Yeah,
underdog.
yeah.
It's great.
This is a group of people who should be dead, right?
Yeah.
And you can bring them back from the brink and
Exactly.
reform.
And you see the conflict of the main heroes of the time from a different perspective.
Yes,
You basically
yeah.
observe from the
Yeah,
outside
yeah.
and can influence how everything plays out.
And it's tough from the word go. There's no 2 ways about it. Like you definitely are the underdog. Like you are not legitimate in the eyes and not fit to rule in the eyes of the authority factions. The established dynasties that are obviously fighting for supremacy on their own, but they won't even do diplomacy with you at the start. And it's just like
They would
they're
gladly
sorted.
unite against you, basically.
Yeah.
As the Yellow Turban. Like.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of, as the place where they sort of got their name, quelling this rebellion. I suppose they're not going to let you just come back and completely undermine their position. Oh, we can forget about that, guys. It was a long time ago. So the Yellow Turban faction is available for those who are pre-ordering the game, and it's also available for a short time after.
A week after launch.
Yep.
Early adopter bonus, as they say. So even if the game's it's within the first week of the core game sale. It'll still be.
Yeah, so if you want to wait for reviews and
Exactly.
hear opinions,
YouTube
then,
videos,
yeah.
and just check it out and feel the quality for yourself before you buy it.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for joining us, guys.
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting discussion. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed that. If you'd
yeah.
like to hear more about Free Kingdoms, stay tuned to all of our social channels where we're going to be talking about quite a lot of things to come, quite a lot of information that we still need to give out, and loads of features and gameplay that we need to show off as well. We'll also be back on Rally Point in about 2 weeks, depending on a few things, but we may be back next week, just as a little hint, because there might be something else that we need to talk about. But that's as far as I can go. That's as far as I can go. Thanks very much for watching. I have been Michael Wheels Whelan. This has been Leif and Al. Thank you very much for joining me, guys.
Cheers.
We'll
Nice
see
one.
you next time. See you soon.
Later.